Welcome to week 4. We are doing awareness before action. So my neuroscience back framework has awareness, acceptance, action. You can't change what you are not noticing and aware of. And our primitive brain in a survival state will have you reacting well far down the road before you're consciously aware of the response you wish you have. And we're going to dive into that this week. And if you have ever felt captive to your reactions and just wishing you could have different relationships with people instead of getting into these intense reactionary states, this week is for you. This week, we're diving into the fourth and final principle of lasting change, this idea of awareness before action. Because you can't change what you're fused to. Most people try to change behavior while being completely inside of it. When we are fused to our thoughts, emotions, or impulses, actions become automatic. They're reactive rather than chosen. And lasting change requires awareness with space, this opportunity for acceptance. It's the ability to notice patterns without immediately acting on them and without judging or becoming them. Because when awareness leads, action becomes responsive instead of compulsive. And so we want to notice before we narrate. And we want to become the observer, not the pattern. Before moving into an action, pause long enough to ask, what's happening in me right now? And for my paid subscribers, we're actually going to outline the rooted model. And the rooted model is this thing that I have kind of coined and trademarked that allows us to realize that there's a phobia between the mind and body when stress comes on. And the more that we realize that awareness, the more that we can get out of these reactionary states and be able to ground ourselves, tend to our garden, get above the soil, not live in that inner soil and live beneath the soil, and be able to tend to our fruit and have the responses that we want. And so the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to get rooted. To regulate, to create a space. And that space is so important because it allows us to take time to know what we want to take into that space and what we want to leave out of that space. And so we're going to really create a space. And we've got a great article that I wrote almost a year ago on boundaries build relationships and what these bubbles do and how we're supposed to create a space for our bubbles to go into together, not to bring people into our bubbles or get into their bubble. And then next, we're going to observe the pattern. Now, this stuff is not easy, so don't judge yourself for this. I have clients in therapy, and I have a 1 to 3 remission rate, so I can get your clinicals down really quickly on anxiety and depression. And yet, you may not be anxious or depressed at a clinical level. There's still stuff happening at a survival level. So you're not in a hypervigilant state anymore. You're not constantly ruminating. And yet you're still having these things where it just cranks you up and you react so quickly. And we build over time with my coaching clients. We build to observe these patterns. And my clients actually find themselves kind of on the outside watching, and not in that I don't belong, I'm not seen and heard, but this sense of calm comes over them and they can actually start to see clinically what I share with them are these observing points where they can actually see the dynamics play out with their partner, with their family, with their friends, with their boss and coworkers. And they're no longer in those reactionary states. They're now able to take a beat and see, oh, I see what you're wanting right now. I see what your anxiety is asking. And I see how my body wants to react to that ask. But I'm going to regulate for a minute. And I'm going to respond in the way that I want that lets you feel validated without me agreeing and reducing myself for you. And that lets us orient to the observer pattern, where we're finding that power of neutral and we're seeing what's happening. Is there a triangulation happening? What is the request of me so that I can ground and I can provide agency to you and to us, and that we can actually choose to go into the space together instead of fighting to see who's going to occupy my bubble, or am I trying to occupy their bubble? We do it all the time. Take that breath. You're going to notice it this week, and it's just fabulous when you do. And then again, we're going to find that cadence. Titrate awareness windows. Don't feel like you have to have insight in everything. Choose one important interaction that you have where you just feel like you just spin off from 0 to 60 and just get aware. Take a breath, take a beat. Know that that's your trigger. So mindfully ground before you even get into it. That's what coaching is all about. Titrate those awareness windows. It'll let you feel like you have more control, actual control, instead of anxiously vying for perceived control. As always, engage in intentional action. Take that beat so that you have that one purpose-driven step to guide you forward. And then deepen the anchor. Really let this awareness guide you forward. Be rooted in the awareness. It will keep you above the soil and not get stuck in the quicksand of your own mind. So in my neuroscience-backed framework, we have awareness, acceptance, action. It feels so simple. These 3 A's that will change the way you think and how you behave. And when we look at cognitive behavioral therapy, we have thoughts, feelings, and behaviors, and they're all connected. They're all connected to show that our thoughts, our feelings, and behaviors, one will drive the other, causing the last. And it doesn't matter where you start because they're all interconnected. So you can have a feeling that drives a thought that creates a behavior that creates a feeling and drives a thought. It doesn't matter. They're all interconnected. Those feedback loops that I talk about so much. And that is what pulls us into these reactionary patterns. And we have what's called a default mode network. And this default mode network is kind of how we are at baseline. And that can be like very relaxed and chill. Wouldn't that be nice? But oftentimes it's chaotic and it's full of ruminations and planning and perceived control that we are trying to seek. It's jumbled with lots of anxious thoughts. And so what we're doing this week as we take one micro intentional step forward is trying to look at what our default mode network is. Give grace to yourself for understanding that this is survival. You've gotten this far. The generations have come this far. And allowing ourselves to let go of the shame and guilt, the judgment around it, so that we can be present and let life present. So let's get started. And so as always, we have a worksheet for you to be able to get the key insights. Paid subscribers is actually, as I said, going to use that rooted model to be able to ask reflective questions and do activities that help them to better understand each part. And you don't have to go through all of it. Each week, we're giving you a key idea and theme. The challenge will give you very specific activities. Choose one. And then we have our cultivating mental blooms that will give you a metaphor of living beneath the soil and tending to our garden. Choose one. And then Emma is going to come in with her workshop, and she's going to actually synthesize all of this information and give you a guided activity to do. Choose one. And then I'm going to give you a part of our neuroscience back framework. I'm going to give you an example of what things that we all do. I don't pick these because I'm like, no one's going to know about this. I pick these topics because we all get into these patterns. And then on Friday, I give you kind of a 5-step of 5 indicators that allows you to kind of find how you are showing up in these patterns in a nice, easy, digestible way. So there's something for everybody. Everyone has a different learning style. So I give you pieces and parts not to overwhelm you, but to choose one thing. If you press play every day in a microstep, the compounded growth is massive. And remember, there's no wrong steps. That's why the world is round, is because it doesn't matter what direction you go. Eventually, you will get to where you're going. I'm Jennifer Evans with Empowering Wellness Counseling Solutions. Thank you so much.